Hello, it's Lynn Watts here from Wyatt the Wonder Dog Books. And today I want to continue a discussion about small groups in elementary school. So, in my last video, I talked about why small groups are important and the benefits of small groups. Today, I want to talk about some of the possible small groups that you might run in an elementary school, and then also give you some tips for important aspects of getting those groups going and making them successful. So, some of the small group topics that I would recommend and that I ran myself, the first one was a new student group. This would depend a lot on how many new students you get. If you get a huge influx of new students, then if it feels like almost everybody's new, then of course this would not be practical. But if you have a student population that typically kind of stays the same year after year, but you have new students joining in, then you can easily ask teachers to share the names of those students. And usually having a group like that very early in the year, schedules are not quite so important. Everybody's kind of learning the ropes, and these are students who are going to need perhaps some special attention in terms of making friends, in terms of learning the culture of the school, learning the rules of the school, fitting in, all kinds of things. So a new student group can be very useful. And then you might, again, have another one maybe mid-year if you get a lot of new students, perhaps after the first of the year. So a new student group is one. I did some study skills groups. These tend to be extremely popular with parents. So I think you have to be careful about what you promise to do. One year, in my early years, I was ambitious enough to ask parents, what groups and sign their children up for groups. And I had a very involved parent group at the school I worked with. And my goodness, I got so many requests for groups. I almost went nuts trying to meet them all. So sometimes it's better to come at it from a little different perspective, especially if you're talking about study skills, because probably every parent in a school feels like their student could benefit from study skills. And indeed they could. And so that would be more of a classroom lesson. You probably want to pull students who have some particular issues or problems with study skills, academics, and that sort of thing. So a skills group can certainly be a very productive group. A friendship group, or you might think of it, you probably wouldn't call it a social skills group, but more along those lines for students that perhaps have some trouble with social skills, have trouble getting along with others, have trouble making friends, keeping friends, that sort of thing. So that can be a good group to run. A group about anxiety or stress or something along those lines certainly would be an appropriate uh, group to run in current times. Everybody seems to be stressed and anxious. So you could certainly be teaching some skills to those students who have particular problems with that. And then finally, and obviously you wouldn't call it this, but some sort of emotional management group. It might more have to do with understanding feelings and, emotional regulation sort of thing. In which case, you might come to the point of saying, what should I call the groups? And I think it's best. Obviously, you're not going to call it emotional management. I think then you're labeling students, but you might have something that is a little more generic. You might even suggest to the students that you got them all together because of this issue. And what would you like to call the group? You might have them come up with a name for it. So there's a lot of different ways to handle that issue in terms of what you're going to call the group. But certainly you don't want to label or make students feel that in some way they're very different from the rest of the student body. So some particular tips for setting up and running a small group. I've already kind of mentioned assessing the needs, but I think it's useful to certainly ask teachers what they see as needs for groups. You might get some of the topics and needs from your student support team or, that sort of a mechanism. You might get referrals in that way and create a group around particular issues that you have a number of students who are needing some help with. Um, So, and you certainly, in some way, I already mentioned the caution about parents, but I think you can, if you're working perhaps with some individual parents, you might ask if they think a student might benefit from a group that you have ongoing or that you're planning. So that certainly can be useful as well. The second tip, I think, is to set some clear objectives. You want to make sure that you have a plan for the group, and that's why this is a good time to recommend my school counselor small group guide. Each one of the lessons in here have objectives, all right, and they're ASCA objectives based on the topic. Each one of the lessons also have the standards of ASCA. So you've got some real clear direction in each one of the lessons here, but you want to make sure that each group has a purpose and you know where you're going with it. And along those lines, setting some goals and being clear with students what the goals are for the group as well. I think that's important also. So you want to plan ahead. I think, this is not a situation where you want to just wing it. If you just get together for a chat or to kind of meet with everybody, that's a different kind of event. And you certainly can do lunch bunch groups where you kind of just meet up with students, get to know them, find out any issues or concerns. But a particular small group, I think you want to clarify who's in the group, your objectives, rules for the group, what students can expect, how often they can expect to meet, how long the group is going to last in terms of, how many lessons, how often you're going to get together, that sort of thing. So you want to plan ahead and you want to have some structure to the group, of course. You want to keep the group small. I think, 4, 5, maybe 6 students is certainly enough to have a good foundation for the group. You want to have enough students there that if 1 or 2 are absent, it's not worthless or it doesn't turn into an individual counseling session. It's no longer a group because, it's so small. But on the other hand, if it gets too large, then you're dealing with a whole lot of other things. You're dealing with trying to get that many students together based on their schedule. You're faced with where are you going to meet. If you're trying to meet around a particular time and everybody's schedule is different, there are a lot of things that are involved the bigger the group gets. So I think if you have maybe 4, 5, 6 students, that's probably a good number. You obviously want to have group norms and group rules that you start with. Things like, what we talk about in the group stays within the group, and, give some examples of that. And, being respectful of each other, particular kind of typical group norms, I think, are important. You want to have some engaging activities. You want students to look forward to coming. And partly, of course, that's going to be due to the community of the group and the support they get. But you also want to do some fun activities. And so, again, in my small group guide, there what lesson is. It's first of all a getting to know you game or icebreaker that you can do, and then there is some sort of activity that you can do with the students surrounding each one of the topics. So make sure you plan something that is active and engages their attention. And then finally, you want to evaluate progress in some way. You could do that by, in the beginning, kind of asking about their knowledge of what we're talking about, what goals they have, and then you can evaluate, of course, if they have been able to achieve those goals by the end of the group. You could do it in that way. You can also assess what they've learned. Each one of the lessons in my group guide has a journal page that you can copy and use for the students, and each one of them begins with, what have you learned about this particular topic? So they have a chance to write about this. Now, obviously, I guess I should say this is going to be for your older students. I would not do a group with really young students. I don't think for kindergarten, first, second grade, I think it's very difficult to have a group with students that young. The concept of it, all of the structure and so forth is they're you can do a lot of things with student, but I would not probably have a small group on any of these topics. Unless perhaps you did maybe a new student group, and that would be almost very short, maybe even just one-time thing to help them get acclimated to the school. But third, fourth, fifth grade, those are going to be some good ages because they can relate more to each other. They're going to understand more what you're talking about. They can do some writing activities. They can do some more creative type of activities as well. So I think those are good ages. So in any case, I think it is important to evaluate your progress, and so that in some way you can let teachers and parents know this was the benefit of your student participating in this group. So again, I hope all of that helps in the important work that you do. Thank you for that. And thanks so much for listening.